Named to honor one of the fathers of air traffic control, the Glen Gilbert Award is ATCA's highest honor. The award recognizes long-term commitment, achievement, and excellence in aviation. The trophy was designed and donated by the Hughes Aircraft Company, now part of Raytheon Company, and it's permanently displayed at the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum. First presented in 1986, the Glen Gilbert Award honors individuals whose lives and service to aviation have made our nation and our world a better and safer place. Recipients have come from all over the globe and from all facets of the air traffic control community, including government, private industry, and supporting organizations.
It's wonderful to be able to look back and have that kind of a career and to have it topped off by your peers rewarding you with an award like this.
Well, there's no question that being a recipient of the Gilbert Award really puts you in a very small fraternity of people. But again, I've always been very, very humbled by being associated with the recipients of the Gilbert Award.
As you can see, the Glen Gilbert Award has many distinguished winners for their lifetime contributions to aviation. Tonight, Garland Kaz Castleberry joins the list. Kaz has enjoyed a long, exciting career, one of many stops and great memories along the way. And while Kaz took great pride in his achievements over the years, family always remained number one in his heart. Enjoy tonight. Enjoy retirement, Kaz. You deserve it.
Garland Paul Castleberry was born on March 22, 1936 in Morehouse, Missouri. Growing up in southeast Missouri, Cass enjoyed all sports, reading, playing the piano, and saxophone. He was a leader in high school as president of the student body, a champion debater, and a member of the National Honor Society. He played basketball, ran track, and was a two-way player on the football team that was ranked number 1 in Missouri. It was also at Sykeston High School that he met his future wife, Phyllis Alexander. The Navy was his first stop after graduation, and it was obvious early on that Cass was on a very fast track. He was promoted 5 times in 3 years to the second highest enlisted rating, Air Controlman First Class. He graduated first in his class at the Navy Air Traffic Control School, and at the age of 19 was a CAA certified control tower operator at the busy Naval Air Station Memphis. At the age of 20, he was selected for the Navy's Advanced Air Traffic Control class. Again at the top of his class, he returned to Memphis and obtained a senior approach control rating and was the watch supervisor of the tower. In 1958, after 4 years of Navy service, Cass joined the FAA at the Memphis Center. Memphis Tower Chief Jimmy Arthur, who administered all of his certification tests, wrote that Castleberry was the most outstanding candidate he had ever recruited. His early records certainly lived up to that billing as he recorded a perfect score on the 7-part Airways Operations Specialist exam at the FAA Academy and was a fully qualified controller at the Memphis Air Route Traffic Center in less than 1 year and detailed to the position of controller 6 months ahead of schedule.
And I remember one other thing in my career that was probably the thing that set me into the excitement and loving to work airplanes. I said I was a GS-8 and I was working here in the Nashville area. There's a big military movement going in and out of Campbell Army Airfield, Hopkinsville, Kentucky. And I wasn't sure I was equal to the task, but I was sure trying to be. And we were controlling all kinds of airplanes, and old DC-3s were flying in and out of the civilian airport near there. And I remember the watch supervisor got the chief controller to come up and watch me work airplanes, and I'll never forget him standing behind me. I looked around and I was so afraid, am I doing something wrong? And then I realized they were saying, hey, he's really doing a good job, and the hair was actually staying on the back of my neck. I was so excited. And I never lost that love for controlling airplanes.
It was a busy time in areas outside aviation as well. Cass and Phyllis had 2 young children and a third on the way. And if that wasn't enough, he was also a full-time student at Memphis State University. Thanks in part to his fellow controllers who were willing to trade numerous shifts, Cass graduated with honors in less than 3 years. While he and Phyllis were happy raising their family in Memphis and Cass enjoyed the challenge of air traffic control, he didn't hesitate when he was recruited by the FAA Office of Management Systems to work at FAA headquarters in Washington, D.C. In a short time, he was recognized for his performance by Administrator Najib Halaby. After a few months, Cass, along with other FAA management analysts, was detailed to the newly created Office of Economic Opportunity. While at OEO, he was selected as a Congressional Fellow. At the end of the year-long study of legislative operations, Cass was asked to join the staff of Florida Congressman Sam Gibbons as his legislative assistant. The time on Capitol Hill was rewarding. The experience of working on major legislation would prove to be invaluable. But after 3 years, it was time for Cass to return to his first love, aviation. So it was back to the FAA. Cass then had an important role in preparing the agency's first 10-year plan and in working with the aviation industry to get input for long-range planning. A 60-day assignment to the administrator's office turned into 6 years of service under 3 administrators, Jack Schaefer, Alexander Butterfield, and Dr. John McLucas. Cass spent the 1974 and 75 academic year as a Princeton Fellow at the Woodrow Wilson School of Public and International Affairs. Soon after, he was able to put that experience to use as he received an appointment from President Gerald Ford to become the Deputy U.S. Representative to the International Civil Aviation Organization and member of the Air Navigation Commission in Montreal. During his time at ICAO, he was instrumental in revising standards and recommended practices of international air traffic operations, as well as establishing international regulations for the transportation of dangerous goods. Cass also had a key role in establishing standards for precision approaches and improvements in aviation security.
When we were in Montreal, and he was assigned as a U.S. member of the International Civil Aviation Organization, the Air Navigation Commission. So he was the U.S. man in Montreal, and it was at a time when there was a lot of contention about competing landing systems, and a lot of national pride involved, a lot of technical arguments, a lot of personal competition. It was very bitter. It was very intense. A lot of things thrown around back and forth. But he was kind of above the fray. I mean, he was a statesman, and the world aviation community's got a lot to debt of gratitude to him for the time he served up there.
From Montreal, the scene shifted to, believe it or not, an even colder climate. Cass began a 2-year stint as the Deputy Director of the FAA's Alaska region with major operational responsibility. In the flying estate, he also served as the Federal Emergency Coordinator for all modes of transportation in the region. 1981 brought Cass back to FAA headquarters in Washington. Under Administrators Len Helms and Don Engen, he was in charge of the FAA's congressional affairs. He dealt with a broad range of issues related to the strike recovery, national aviation system modernization, and the growing demands for air traffic capacity and safety improvements.
I really enjoyed working with him as a member of Congress. Cass was head of liaison with the Congress when he was with the FAA, and so I dealt with him a great deal. At one point I chaired the aviation subcommittee, but he's had a very distinguished career with the FAA. He's had a private sector career with Harris, and then again I've followed him over the years. I've highly respected him in terms of the advice and counsel, but more importantly in terms of his friendship.
In 1985, Cass was appointed director of the Mike Monroney Aeronautical Center in Oklahoma City. There he was responsible for the FAA Academy, the Management Training School, the Logistics Center, the Airmen and Aircraft Registry, aviation standards and flight inspection of national and international navigational aids. Then came perhaps his biggest challenge. In 1986, Cass was named Regional Director of the FAA's largest region, the Southern Region. In Atlanta, with 8,800 employees and an annual budget of nearly $1 billion, he was responsible for the FAA programs in the southeastern United States, the Caribbean, Central and South America. He was involved with many military installations in the Southeast. He established Southern News and Views, an employee video communications activity. Cass also served as chairman of the Atlanta Federal Executive Board, representing 110 federal agencies and 50,000 government workers in the Atlanta area. He was recognized by Transportation Secretary Sam Skinner for his leadership in team building for all modes of transportation in the region. Those skills were never more evident or useful than when Cass led the regional recovery effort in the aftermath of Hurricane Hugo.
And many are suffering the after effects of a major catastrophic event. Help is vitally needed. We have sent emergency relief supplies to our people and have quickly evacuated families from St. Thomas and St. Croix using the agency's DC-9.
In 1992, Cass returned to Washington headquarters as an Associate Administrator of Aviation Standards. And in 1993, deciding it was time to move to the next phase of life, he retired from the federal government after 39 years. Much like his career in government, Cass's 13 years in the private sector has been a whirlwind experience. The highlight has been his time with Harris. In 1997, Cass joined Harris's Government Communications Systems Division, where his primary focus was on business development for aviation programs. In that time, Harris landed a 15-year, $3.5 billion contract to modernize the FAA's telecommunications infrastructure.
I think the thing that he really brought to us, and it's back to his knowledge of the overall, is further domain knowledge, particularly in the operations and how they do things in the regions of the FAA. Cass is just a wealth of knowledge. He's a tremendous personality. One of the keys you'll find is if you walk at any FAA facility or at any FAA gathering and you're with Cass, then you have to allow an extra 30 minutes to get where you're going because someone will always stop and want to talk with him. That's just the way he is.
Cass has had a multitude of jobs all over the continent, but one constant has been his association with ATCA. Dating back to 1959, he's been an active participant in many ATCA programs as a moderator or panelist, both domestic and international. Cass has served as chairman of the ATCA Board of Directors and last November accepted a limited term appointment as president and CEO.
I met Cass in November 1957 at Navy Memphis Tower, and he mentored me as an air traffic controller.
Well, I could list the contributions that Cass has made to ATCA going back from the early beginnings of the organization. I could list his scholarship involvement. I could list his duty to the organization as a chairman, the way he stepped out of retirement to help us when we were desperately needed someone to stabilize the organization last year. Those are all very positive for Cass and for the organization. But in reality, Cass is ATCA. Cass is its heart and its soul. He carried forward the ideals that were generated when they started the organization. He has mentored people. He has fostered the organization to where it is today. And it's his spirit that has made ATCA the success it is today. And it's with great honor that I got to work for him and with him, and I have been honored every step of the way. He is both a magnificent individual for the FAA, for the U.S. government, for the Harris Corporation, and for ATCA. We would not be a successful organization if it wasn't for Cass. Cass, thank you from the bottom of my heart for all the things you've done for me personally and for what you've done for this organization.
Cass has had one of the most diverse careers of anyone in the FAA. In more than 50 years, he's risen from the control center in Memphis to the highest levels of aviation planning and decision-making. He hasn't done it alone. He's always had the support of Phyllis and his 5 children. But beyond that, Cass has had the great fortune to work with quality individuals in an industry he loves.
When they asked the question on the checking out your background, would you put the lives of your family in this person's hand? That was a very serious question, so I took that meaning, you better always be the best. And I've thought that if you're in a room of 100 controllers and someone says, who's the best controller? I thought everyone should raise their hand, and I'd want to be the first one to raise my hand because it demands excellence.
His work ethic, his compassion for people, and his willingness to help others advance in their careers, combined with a genuine desire to make air travel the most efficient and safest form of transportation, are the hallmarks of his years of service. That is why Garland Cass Castleberry is joining the distinguished fraternity as the 2006 recipient of the Glen Gilbert Award.